Welcome El Rancho Unified School Board member Leanne Ibarra. Thank you for coming on, Leanne.
Thank you for having me, Rodolfo. I appreciate it.
Yes. So, Leanne, you were elected as part of a progressive majority, which promised policies like ethnic studies and serving underserved populations of students, such as those with maybe special needs and those who identify as LGBTQ plus. And yet, you are currently facing a recall campaign, which has been mounted by people who don't necessarily agree with this progressive direction that you and the other board members have pursued. So before we discuss this recall, let's talk about your election. I'd love to hear about it. How did you decide to run?
Well, thank you. Yes, I appreciate the question. So essentially what motivated me to even get involved with the school board was first the wonderful things that were happening. There was an introduction to Rancho Unified School District, a brand new high school, which is an alternative to the traditional contemporary high school, El Rancho High School. And it was the perfect setting for my middle daughter as she was transitioning into high school. So I started getting really involved in the school district and was really, really appreciative of what Ellen Ochoa had to offer my daughter. She has always been, I guess, like an easy learner, if you will, but never had honed in on her own identity as an individual. And when she went to Ellen Ochoa, because of the ethnic studies lens that they use to really highlight in all their subjects, it really helped her grow her own autonomy, really gain an identity and a purpose, if you will, that she was even more excited to learn. Granted, she got good grades, but she actually wanted to go to school. She wanted to be with her friends. She wanted to join this particular class because she knew how much it would open and expand her horizon. So those are the things that I seen, and I was super grateful for that board at the time to even think of opening up Ellen Ochoa. So as I seen her flourish and progress, I also unfortunately seen the board at the time take a, a turn for the worst, if you will, because they were really just taking steps back as to what they had already accomplished. For example, they accomplished bringing ethnic studies as a graduation requirement, the first school district in California to do so, continued on with a great curriculum. And as the curriculum started to grow and really kind of elevate to the next level, really integrating students and helping them to understand what ethnic studies, a true ethnic studies curriculum was, um, the representing the misrepresented, right, or the underrepresented, if you will. They felt very much empowered. Through that empowerment, the teacher at the time who was at Ellen Ochoa, who kind of was really instrumental, particularly for my daughter, in understanding that part of herself. She expanded that to parents. So when I joined the Parent Ethnic Studies class, which was approved by the district at the time, everybody was on board and nobody had really any negativity towards that. Once that started to really get more and more involved, it seems as though the, if you opposition started showing up to our meetings, and then all of a sudden, long story short, our parents ethnic studies class got shut down. The domino effect to that was that particular teacher, Lupe Carrasco Cardona, she was unfortunately forced to resign. I mean, I say fired. There ain't no such thing. I mean, she was basically fired for presenting this information, and the reasoning, obviously, because she didn't have that security with tenure or anything. They could give any reason, but the reasonings were not all there. They try to say that she was indoctrinating parents and teaching students to be racist and hate white people and anti-Israel, anti-law enforcement, which was never the case. It was just about critical thought and understanding our place in this history. Um, Another domino effect to that was the principal, Dr. Elias Vargas at the time, got demoted back to the school that he was at prior. And because he's a man of integrity, because whatever the situation was, he ended up leaving to another district. So not only did our students lose the ethnic studies curriculum that so nourished them, mind, body, and spirit, they also lost the most educated, or rather the most credentialed, I should say, the most credentialed educator there on campus who was really instrumental in bringing a lot of the ethnic studies curriculums. They lost their principal, who basically started this school from the ground up. So my joy just quickly turned to anger. I was mad. The students were upset. They were devastated. The parents were up in arms because they had the same experience I was having, especially the ones that were really vested in this ethnic studies parents class. So we kind of snowballed from there. We would go to meetings. We let the board know our dissatisfying, how dissatisfied we were with the results of what they've done. All the good stuff they did, they took 10 steps back and highlighted that. At that point in time, I didn't know anybody on the board. I kind of was just like really resistant to the whole entire board. What I didn't understand at the time, that there were two board minority on the board at the time, Mr. Jose Lara and Mr. Gabriel Orozco, who were big proponents of ethnic studies, big proponents of Ellen Ochoa. They internally were fighting for the school to not have this happen to them, but because they were the minority at the time, they were powerless, if you will. Uh, I then helped and assisted students and parents to garnish meetings, private personal meetings with each board member, superintendent, these kids. And I have the one best piece of advice that I got when I was starting on this adventure is someone told me that it's our duty as a community to record everything. So mind you, I have all these meetings recorded. I have hours and hours of footage of these students bleeding, crying their hearts out to these board members, and these board members just basically saying, I feel sorry for you, it'll get better, but we're not going to change any decision we've made. At that point in time, I really felt powerless, and I decided to run for school board because there was a vacancy, and I was encouraged by the students, by my own student, by the parents, and I understood the reality of what's going on. I was being affected with what was going on. I felt voiceless and powerless, so I thought to myself, what better way to bring that to the board by other than running? And to be quite honest, when things are at that boiling point and everything's condensed down, you really see who's really there in the struggle with you and not. And nobody else was going to do this, so I had to do it, Rodolfo. I had to take it upon myself to do it for the community, and so that's kind of how I got started.
Wow, that's wonderful. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like so there was this emerging, focus and prioritization
Right.
and desire to have, ethnic studies in particular be a part of the curriculum. And there was some blowback, as there continues to be, but clearly, the community seems to, they elected you, so,
Right.
you know, they supported I'm guessing you were open about your support for ethnic studies.
Oh, absolutely. And I've always been open and honest about everything that I would want to propel forward in this district. Ethnic studies was kind of like the launching board for me that really opened up my eyes, and not only on a community and a social level, but on a personal level. It really it honed in on something. I say that it completed me with something that was vacant that I never even knew that I needed. Like I never knew I needed this kind of knowledge, if you will, this kind of um, handed down uh, traditions. I mean, everything that is a component of ethnic studies is it was something I was always been missing, but I never knew it until it was actually in my life and I understood. So I felt compelled, and my daughter had that own experience in her own way. So I can only feel as though if I can help young people to discover this about themselves and to help them grow and to give them the tools and the skills to be able to deal with certain things in life, that's what I wanted to be a proponent of. So that's kind of where I got started. That really resonated with the community. I mean, so much so that 6,866 people voted for me. That's 20.7% of all the votes that were at that time done for the school board. And it really is a depiction of the importance of school board in the community because, and I'm not saying this as like a bragging point, but it's just a highlight of the importance because I actually attained more votes than the incumbent mayor at the time. So it's not a necessarily a Leanne Ibarra thing, but it really is a depiction of the community's importance of public education in their city, as well as wanting to propel forward what I was about. One of those being the ethnic studies curriculum. One of those was keeping Ellen Ochoa open, because unfortunately at the time, which is still currently happening, a lot of teachers, especially the union leadership, are very much, how would I say this? They always question Ellen Ochoa. They always question it in the sense of how much money is Ellen Ochoa making. They were actually, when the schools first opened, a lot of the same recall people were against Ellen Ochoa when it opened. Said they actually launched a recall at that time too for board member Orozco and I believe Dr. Villon. Um, I don't know exactly, but I know Mr. Orozco was on that recall, who had just gotten elected as well. So it really is a struggle that they have been having consistently. Once I got elected and the board majority was no longer supported by the teachers union, because let me tell you, when I first ran for school board, I went to the teachers union and I asked them for their endorsement. I would love to have an endorsement by our teachers union and classified union. I think that a school district cannot be as successful or live to its full potential if they don't work cohesively. I mean, this is a result of school board, classified union, and teachers union not working cohesively.
Got it.
It,
Interesting. Clearly, yeah. So when you got elected, there were, there were different ideas or groups that had different interests. But I'm really curious. Could you tell us a bit more about your campaign? How did that go? I mean, because
sure,
you mentioned the number of votes you got,
right.
and so could you talk about, I know, so Jose Lara also ran in that campaign. Is that right?
Yes. Jose
Yes.
Lara ran during that time, and he actually garnished 27% of the votes, which was unprecedented. I mean, I would say like a couple hundred shy of 10,000. I don't know the exact number, but I know it was like at least 9,500 plus. So that was really record breaking. And what I was lucky enough to understand and really grasp what the community wanted and needed with the help of running my campaign alongside of Jose Lara's. I was able to garnish a lot of supporters that really understood and were on that pathway, and also understood, okay, here's this new candidate, she's being introduced, endorsed obviously by Jose Lara. A lot of his campaign team helped me run mine, because time my campaign, or rather, yeah, my campaign team, if you will, that they consisted of, majority of them were students, a few parents, family members, but I would say 80% of the people that supported me in my campaign on a regular basis were students. And with that, and in conjunction with the help Jose Lara got from the organizations that he was a part of at the time, everybody just really came together in solidarity. And we understand, and that campaigning and knocking on doors and resonating with people in reality versus on the computer or social media can actually bring people to the voting polls. Like voters, I mean, the levels of votes could be raised up to like 10% if you really have a good ground campaign. So I was lucky enough to have good ground campaign, have a really strong team of people, a really good, really strong solidarity with a lot of organizations, and we were the hungriest. We wanted this, and not just for myself, but I this was propelling forward for me with the lens of, this is going to help the next generation of kids and the generations after that. I have also not just one in high school, but I also have a rather 6-year-old. She's in kindergarten. She's barely starting her journey here in public school. And if I can help her generation and any other generation to come and leave something that's lasting, that is my goal. Because at the end of the day, Rodolfo, the rhetoric, the name calling, because really that's unfortunately what they do. They make fun of my physical appearance, they make fun of my educational level, the gap in my teeth. I mean, it's really just ridiculous. People don't remember that stuff though. That they're not going to remember that. What they're going to remember is, what did Leanne Ibarra do for this community? what did she propel the rebuild forward as she really ran on it and campaigned for? And the truth is, yes, that I've been fulfilling everything that I've promised. Obviously, there's much more work to be done. This is just my first year as a newly elect, as somebody who's really never been in this kind of position. So,
Right, right. Wow. Well, no, but thank you for sharing all that. I mean, it sounds like, yeah, the campaign was a community effort and
right,
involving lots of organizations and lots of students, people that really had a stake in this. And clearly the community voted for,
right,
the direction you were proposing, as well as Jose Lara.
yes,
I'm wondering if you could, talk about, you've talked a little bit about, maybe some of the things that have been accomplished, in your term. But, so what are some broad, changes, updates to, personnel, to anything that, maybe you would like to talk about, that you're proud about, that you and the other board members have accomplished?
yes, yes. A lot. There's much more positive than negative, I have to say. One thing that Jose Lara, who was board president at the time, brought a resolution for our LGBTQ plus students. I think that that was really it was something that was unprecedented at the time because of the 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 things that are happening in schools as far as that demographic is concerned. We know that history has shown that that has probably been, as well as maybe special needs demographic, that has really been the most underrepresented, as well as unfortunately victimized the most. So when Jose Lara brought that resolution, that was actually something I was very proud that the board passed 5-0. I love it when we can pass things 5-0, because it really shows the community that despite differences, we are there for the right reasons, and we do have those at the forefront of any decision making. Another resolution was parent engagement. To know that a lot of our campuses, especially elementary schools, don't have like parent centers, parent rooms, things where parents could physically meet. That was something that I was a big proponent of, and I helped create that resolution. And with Jose Lara, we got it passed. That was another one that was passed 4-0, or 5-0 rather. Yeah, it was 5-0 at the time. That to me is super important, because what I know, having been involved in El Rancho Unified since my older daughter was here back in 1999, things were different back then. But there was a much more parent engagement presence on campus back when she was in elementary school versus now my kindergartner who's in elementary school. The difference, and that's a lot of years, that's a good 18-year difference. The difference is really, I understand security is at the utmost importance for our children, but at the same time we need to be able to have them feel safe and to bring parents on campus. So I understood the importance of that, as well as keeping things safe. So we want to create a good balance. That was actually something I was really proud of. Um, we've also been able to get more um, um, like counselors for students. We were able to get more social emotional help. And that's a lot of hard work through the cabinet too. I don't want to take credit for the hard work that our district does, but what I do want the community to know, that all these things that come to the board, all these things that I pass, I always use the lens of students first. I ask myself all the time, is this what's best for students? Or is there an alternative that may be best for students? So it- whether anybody or my constituents want to be critical of that or not, that is definitely the lens that I use. And that is the things that I'm the most proud of, the things that affect the students, whether it be the smallest things, as getting some more field trips or things of that nature, or if it's the big things like passing these resolutions that will stay lasting for these kids for generations to come. That's always in my forefront. And I mean, the biggest thing is probably for me, and lastly, is pushing forth that rebuild. That to me is the biggest way I could not just elevate the voice of the people, but defend the democracy of the people, which is the backbone of our society. If we don't have that, we don't have anything.
Got it. Um, I know there was also there may have been some I think so. There was a new superintendent. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, we were able to hire a superintendent, which I completely support and voted on. That unfortunately was a vote of 3-2. I really wish that could have been a 5-0 as well, for all the reasons I explained. But I'm, you know, what Dr. Francis Esparza brought to the school district and continues to bring on the positive side is really her focus on the kids, especially with the things that we need help on, like our ES learners, our special needs demographics. She's really an expert in those things. And when I saw that, she also has a background in construction, which we have that $200 million bond in our city, which was also a great incentive for me to want to vote to have her in. And I would say it was really a symbiotic relationship between the board and her. um, every time I would bring, let's say, an issue that a family, a community member or anybody would bring to me, she was on top of it. To know that she was always foreseeing things before they happened was actually gave me a peace of mind, not just as a board member, but as a mom. um, so with that being said, I think once the political aspect of everything kind of came to the forefront, now we're at this recall. It's unfortunate that it seems as though she is no longer willing to take the directive of what the board had given her, which is propel this rebuild with all deliberate speed. That directive has never changed. But we're at the point where at a standstill because the board now is split. Unfortunately, Jose Lara had to resign from his position. So the board is now 2-2. And there's really nothing happening in the district because of the split. The only thing that we can continue on is just maybe, you know, keeping the community at the forefront, keeping the students at the forefront of everything we do. So, but that's kind of where we're at.
Got it, got it. Well, it's really wonderful to hear that there has been a prioritization of the social emotional learning. I think that's,
Yes.
you and the rest of the board members and the executive committee should be commended for that. So thank you for, taking that on
Yes.
as the as the board, as the staff. Thank you all for that. So let's talk a bit about, yeah, the recall and the group. Many people have attended your board meetings, and it seems very clear that there is a group of people that is consistently attending and highly determined to engage in the recall, which they have now triggered and is ongoing. So overall, what would you say, what is it that the group seems to want beyond, your individual recall or maybe other recalls? What is the group standing for, if you could speak to that?
Sure, sure. So from my perspective, it seems as though it's a couple of things. Keep in mind that what okay. So one thing, and I'm gonna just kind of go step by step. One thing that they're uh, very upset about is in March of 2019, the board majority supported our superintendent in pink slipping 23 administrators, which I am not in the world of education in the sense that I'm an educator or in anything like that. I come with the lens of a parent, but I do my research and I did understand the theory behind doing this. I understand that districts have been doing this for years and decades, and that it is in a sense a type of common practice for one, accountability, and for two, to be able to have the superintendent have the ability to move administrators around to best suit the need of the campus and to highlight and bring whatever that administrator's skills and abilities are. And that was a way to not limit that first superintendent. And for all the reasons laid out, I was in full support of that. The backlash came when this happened, and a lot of results from this. First of all, no administrators were fired. Some ended up leaving on their free will, and I understand that those things are hard. I get it. I was just living through that a few months prior when my daughter's principal, got demoted. When my daughter's teacher was let go without cause. I can resonate with that. I understand, and but with that being said, at the same time, I have to believe in the process. I have to believe in the governance of what the school board represents. And if I am here to hold schools and districts accountable, then I have to be fair on all aspects of it. So that was the reasoning. And I want to see us come out of the hole, because we are a low performing district. Unfortunately, we have many highlights, more highlights than the latter, but we are still an overall district that is not living to the full potential of what our kids deserve. So with that in mind is reason why that was one that was one reason why. um Another reason, and this was March of 2019. Another reason is they just don't like the board majority, because this is really the first time that a board majority has not been backed by the teachers and classified unions. So they want to break up the board majority. And I say that because they say it's because of, one reasoning is because of the pink slips. But keep in mind, in January of 2019, I received an anonymous letter from concerned concerned citizens and teachers, basically berating me, telling me that I need to side with the other two board members, and that if I don't, they're going to pass out propaganda negatively on me to the whole entire city, that I sound like I'm uneducated, that they're body shaming me, making fun of my economical status, making fun of the fact that I'm a single mother. I mean, it really wasn't anything to do with my government. And I bring that up only to highlight that they had been harassing me since January of 2019, when I barely became elected. I was only elected for 2 months, and it's bled into this. So they started, and then in March the pink slips happened, and that was another, reasoning. They say that I'm irresponsible with the funds of the bond, and the only reason why they say that is because I voted to continue to allow this rebuild to propel forward. So basically, contracts that were um, no longer, I voted to get them reinstated. For example, a construction company, different entities that would be needed to have this construction start. So once they saw that I was starting to do that, and we created a board majority that was not in alliance with them, and not that we're not in alliance with them, it's just they didn't want to support me or Jose Lara. Once that was established, it was more of a power struggle. So now it's, at first it was the pink slips, and then they were saying that I was, and they're still saying all that these things, and it's all highlighted in the recall. They're also saying, that I was irresponsible with funds. They're also saying that I don't have the best interests in mind for teachers and students, and so on and so forth. But it's one thing after another. So I think the underbelly of this is that they are upset at the fact that some of their candidates didn't get in. They're upset at the fact that they feel like they know what's best. And I say they, and I use the opposition, which consists of a lot of different types of people who live in the city, people who don't live in the city, people who are employed by the district and live in the city, and people who are employed by the district and don't live in the city. So, it's a lot of students, parents. The opposition has just, a different demographic as do every other side. But nonetheless, these certain groups of people have always been consistently pushing against these things that are progressive. It's just another catalyst. They were successful, and I commend them for their hard work for being successful in getting this recall. But again, we're taking it back to the people. We are taking it back to the people. They will speak once again. I believe in democracy. I'm a defender of democracy, and that's just a portion as to why I'm a school board member. That is just one reason why I want to continue on, and why I'm fighting this recall. So
Got it.
it's
So
all,
if I
yeah.
could ask a little bit of clarification question, was the anonymous letter you received, did it have any details about what you were supposed to vote with the other board members on, or was it just very broad?
It was kind of broad, but they were upset at the fact that we were voting basically our construction team back in. We were voting to have the construction management back in. And they were basically saying that if I don't vote with these ladies, whatever it is that they, the other two board members, whatever it is that they're proponents of, if I don't vote to coincide with what they want, then the backlash will be, we're going to make you look bad to the community, essentially is what that letter said. So it was very vague, and I had brought this up, and it was made public, and I will say that the president of the teachers union denied that that had anything to do with teachers, but I just find it very interesting that whoever wrote this letter feels empowered enough to put that teachers that taught my kids, that are currently teaching my kids, are saying this about me. And if they're saying this about me publicly, what are they saying behind closed doors to our children? That's what scares me. Granted, the teachers union denied it, and I have to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, if you will, but this letter clearly says concerned citizens and teachers. So yeah, it
Got it.
wasn't. Yeah.
Hmm. So, and another point that you bring up. So, is it your perception that that the recall? I mean, there's these concrete facts like the pink slips that they're bringing up, and then, but it sounds like you feel like there is a more ideological component to it. So, is it to some extent that it's a reaction against the progressive policy direction of the board with, say, LGBTQ rights? Could you speak to that?
Yes, actually, that's actually an excellent point, because it is, that is really the underbelly of everything. Some examples of that would be when I'm up on the dais and I'm speaking things, as let's say Columbus Day, or Indigenous Peoples Day, and I'll mention the intergenerational traumas that our kids are suffering because of these things. Those constituents that come to those board meetings are there saying, "Oh my gosh, here she goes with her race," and so those are just little microaggressions that I see that are really the catalyst as to why they feel the way they do. When I bring up things as like you know when the jet plane fuel situation happened in Cudahy, and all these you know um, gateway cities, I mentioned that we may be hearing about this, but this has been going on for decades. There's a reason why these gateway cities are filled with brown and black people. There's a reason why this racial climate injustice is happening. And as soon as I start saying those words, those key phrases, the audience just, oh God, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They want to be in denial. They want to still live the way that they have been raised to live. They want to assimilate in a sense that they just want to deny certain things that are happening. So yes, it is really changing and shifting paradigms, and kind of creating a whole nother mentality, a whole nother level of consciousness for our children. And that's really what they're strong proponents of, because that is the essence of what we're about.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
So you've also mentioned that it appears one of the controversies is around the high school and what is being done with the high school. Could you speak to that?
Sure.
From the beginning to to the end about how
Absolutely.
that is affecting the situation.
Absolutely. So in 2016, there was a measure ER on the ballot. ER was a $200 million bond that would be secured for the next like 30 something years. Uh, the it wouldn't affect our senior citizens, so that was a good thing. Essentially, $99 for every $100,000 that your house is worth, is you'll be paying that much more in taxes. The 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 bond was sold to the community on the promise that the majority of this money will go to rebuild our Rancho High School, that the majority of this money will go towards creating an innovative 21st century learning, Google inspired type of campus. That's how the bill was sold. It resonated with the community. Two-thirds majority voted for this. Two-thirds majority said, I'm willing to fork out extra money to have that school for the generations to come. That was a gift that the community gave to the school board at the time. And that propelled forward. Everything was going smoothly as far as, getting all the players in motion, getting the construction team going, getting a steering committee full of students, parents, teachers to decide on the aesthetics of the school, everything was going great. Um, and there was some internal situations with, vendors and whatnot. I was not on the board at this time. This is just things that I've observed from the outside. And then all of a sudden, the board wasn't cohesive anymore on that. They voted to stop the construction. They voted in 20, we were supposed to start construction in October of 2018. Here we are, right? April of 2020, and there's nothing to show for it. The bill, the ER bond passed in 2016. There are similar districts with similar bonds that pass that already have structure. And unfortunately, we don't. So when that started happening in conjunction with what was going on at Ellen Ochoa, once the board majority was created again, we obviously wanted to propel that forward. So the opposition is saying, look, they're saying that they're all for the rebuild, but that they want to do it with a conservative, how would you say, they need to be more fiscally sound is what they're using. And now that we have this COVID situation, it seems as though that our financial advisor, who's not our CBO, she's just kind of an interim. It seems as though she's using scare tactics to scare the community, saying we don't have the money, which we know how bonds are sold. Bonds are sold on the international market. And not only that, bonds, or rather the construction itself is considered essential during this time. So why would we not propel these things forward? But they're using the catalyst as the COVID situation. I ultimately think that, okay, I get that they want to put forth other projects for other campuses, which are needed. And I'm all for that. Granted, I'm all for that. However, we have to understand at the end of the day, this community voted to have a brand new high school. This community understands that the majority of that money will go to rebuild that high school. They are all for that. And if we don't give that to the community, then what does that say about us as a governing board, that we don't respect their voice, that we basically bait and switch them? It's a typical bait and switch, because how can you bait the community into having a brand new high school, and then all of a sudden, fast forward 2 weeks ago, last week, our superintendent sent out a letter to the community saying that we're only getting a modernization. So what does that tell you, that as a community member? It tells me that I voted for this, that I'm currently paying taxes, and I'm on the hook, and I see nothing happening. We got $27 million sitting in the bank. We could propel the first phase at least. Let's go forward with that. Instead, we put everything on hold. It was taken to the board. Obviously, the board was split on signing this amendment that would propel this bill forward. Granted, the superintendent could have signed it herself, and then we could have did an injunction later just to get the construction going, but she chose to bring it to the board knowing it's going to stand still. So now that it's standing still, the doors have been open to, well, we need to go back to the drawing board. But what we have to understand, that DSA plans have already been approved. If we go back to the drawing board, we have to scrap everything, build from scratch once again, which is another $2-3 million process, get new DSA plans, which is another 10 to 12 month process, pay for that because that's expensive, just to end up where we're at today, just to go through that whole full circle, just to end up where we're at today, when we could just easily start from where we're at. And yes, there's a lot of turmoil getting here, but we're here now. Let's make this dream a reality. Let's give these kids what they want. For far too long have our people just been okay with hand-me-downs, been okay with whatever we're given. But we are here to say that we deserve the best, and our kids deserve the best, and that's basically what this rebuild is about.
Got it. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, it's sounding to me like the board has really, been pushing for a progressive direction, and that means both, say, in terms of the curriculum and what
Yes.
is being taught, and how students are being welcomed. So that we can make sure that different students with different experiences feel like they belong in the school, and then of course the physical environment in which they can find themselves, the building itself, putting it into the 21st century. So well, thank you so much for all
Yes.
that information. So clearly, so the recall is going to be on the 5th. Is that right? Of
Actually, in June 2nd is
June 2nd.
that's a recall. Voting is currently going on. We received our mail-in ballots on March, or rather
Mm-hmm.
on the I think the last week, yeah. You
Right.
received your mail-in ballot. So, voting is now, and
Yeah, I mean, it really seems that the future of the board of the school district is on the line here, given that board majority has been pushing for a certain direction that clearly the people supported in the past election. So it's a little bit of a
it's
special
kind of
moment, right? Yeah.
absolutely it is. It's really the last battle, I would say, because this is the people's opportunity to speak one last time, to have their voices heard one last time. Do you want this school, or are you going to allow it to be at the hands of folks who have said time and time again they do not want this rebuild to happen the way it's been laid out before us? They don't want it to happen for anything, and they've made that clear time and time again. They may say that they're for the rebuild, but they want it as to what they want it. They don't want it as to what the people want it, because keep in mind the people were involved in the process the whole time. This isn't what Leanne Ibarra wants. This isn't what Gabriel Rosco wants, or what Dr. Marino or Ms. Castillo want. This is about what the people want. This is about what they voted for. This is about what they have already want to see propelled forward. Now, logistics, if the superintendent wants to um, kind of have this shift in power and wants to be making executive decisions outside of the amendment that we passed to allow her to do that for COVID, she's kind of reaching and using that as a catalyst to make these decisions about the rebuild. If she's going to do that, she needs to ask herself, and the community needs to ask themselves that, just because she's allowed to do it legally, there's a difference between legality and justice. She can get away with it. She won't get sued, perhaps, but is that justice? Is that justice as to what the people have voted for, what the kids need and deserve? Where's the justice? Where's the equity? It's all just adult problems. What about our kids? Because ultimately, they are the ones that are losing here. Our kids are losing. Yes, this recall will go through. Yes, some board members win, some board members lose. That, but ultimately, our kids are the ones that are losing in the game of life, not in the game of politics, in the game of life. So I'm here to say to the community of Pico Rivera, if you want to continue with what you have voted for, and you want to continue to have a voice on the school board, then you need to vote no to the recall. Those are the reasons, not because of what Leanne Ibarra has done or anything to that effect. What you need to do is stand up for your right, for yourself. That's what I'm a vessel of. I'm not here for uh, for the highlights. I'm not here for the badge of honor. I mean, I don't know very many people who would suggest to subject themselves to this type of abuse for no reason. I have all reason to do this. I I I will continue to leave myself vulnerable for the love of my children, for the love of this community. And if I'm not on the board, I promise will not happen. We will go backwards in time. We will be wasting our taxpayers' money, and we will continue to allow our students to lose. And I will not allow that to happen as long as I'm on the board.
Got it. Thank you, Leanne. So clearly, your recall is on the ballot. And is there anything else on the ballot that you'd like to
Yes,
speak about?
sure. So there's essentially the only thing on the ballot is the recall, but the recall comes in two questions. So one question is, do you want to vote to recall Leanne Ibarra? And obviously you answer yes or no. If the answer is yes, then there's a candidate that you can choose from. The second half to that is, do you want to vote to recall Jose Lara? Now, keep in mind, unfortunately, Mr. Jose Lara had to resign for personal reasons, and that seat is vacant. So we definitely want that seat filled. What I'm posing to the community is that you need to vote yes to recall Jose Lara, and understand that the two candidates that are fighting for Jose Lara seat, one is Mr. Joe Rivera, who was already a school board member at the time of him being school board member, was I want to say about a good 15, 20 years ago. It's been a while since he's been a school board member. And I have to say this, for Mr. Rivera, he had his time on the board. he accomplished whatever it was that he accomplished. But how can you want to represent a governing entity such as school or public school, and you don't even believe in public school, and take your kids to a different private school? Which, granted, I went to private school. That was my parents' choice, but I unequivocally believe in public education, so much so that I will have not just my kids in the district, but I will fight for this district too. I wouldn't feel comfortable just as a parent voting in somebody who doesn't believe in that. And I think if you send your kids to public school, that means you believe in public school education. If you don't, then you believe in a different type of education, which is fine. That's what I see with Mr. Joe Rivera. The other candidate is Alan Maciat. Miss Alan comes um, as a principal. He's a principal at a high school in Huntington Park. He understands the plight of what our 95% Latino student body is under. He understands and truly believes in public school education. He's been raised his kids in Pico. His wife actually teaches at one of our elementary schools. Their kids went through public school here in El Rancho. She went to public school here in El Rancho Unified. So I think the best candidate to replace Jose Lara is Mr. Alan Maciel. So we definitely want to have him on the ballot. You know, he comes autonomous, right? He comes just wanting to stop the infighting and just wants to work and be cohesive. That's what I appreciate about him. I read his credentials, and I think that he has the lens to want to bring forth what this community wants, and he does understand and is in touch. So yes to recall Jose Lara, vote for Alan Maciel. No to recall Leanne Ibarra if you want the rebuild to propel forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that summary. So, is there anything else that you'd like to, to communicate to the El Rancho Unified community, or in general?
Yes, first I want to humbly thank them for voting me into this seat. I am a servant to you, to the community, to the students, and I do it with a humble heart, but I do it with a fight and a passion, and that's a fight and a passion for you, the community, for my kids, for the next 7 generations to come. Because we have to understand what we do now is going to impact those next 7 generations to come. And if we don't do what's right now, if we don't propel forward this rebuild of El Rancho High School, if we don't hold schools accountable, hold the district accountable, hold the board accountable for our kids' education, then what good is our struggle? We will continue to fight this recall. I want the community of Pico Rivera to know and understand that I am here to propel what you want forward. I'm here to defend your democracy. If we can't have our local democracy unaffected by things that try to come in and taint democracy, then we don't have anything. It starts at home, it starts in our communities, and know that I am here in solidarity with you. I am your voice. I am your children's voice, and I will continue to push forth for what's best for them, because we want to vote. A vote for Leanne Ibarra is a vote for our kids. A vote for Leanne Ibarra is a vote to propel the rebuild forward, and I will continue to do that, and I have never steered from that. So I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming and speaking with us.
Thank you,
Okay.
Rodolfo. You take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you. Bye
Yes. All
now.
right. Bye bye.